We are already live, so right now it's just a starting now pending page.
Okay. A very good morning to our esteemed guests, Prof. Seeram Ramakrishna, Mr. Leonard, student presenters and fellow audience. Welcome to the first forum of our online grad show intersection series titled Mediations, Embedded and Embedding. My name is Vivienne, and together with Emma, we will be moderators of today's forum session. So a short introduction to the theme of urbanism and environments. This cluster recognizes the inherent ecological nature of architecture against the backdrop of global issues and embedded potentials that lay dormant in an extensive network of relationship beyond our immediate senses. This body of works uncovers the embedded potentials beyond our architectural discipline and re-embeds them meaningfully and purposefully. In the process, questioning exploitative consumption, production methods, boundaries, and ultimately creating new norms. So architecture here is a mediator of the relationships, and in the process of uncovering the embedded potentials and re-embedding them, the approach is by nature widely multidisciplinary. So this forum therefore aims to provide an insight to the outcomes of this approach by engaging with the speakers through sharing and conversations on the challenges and processes. Before we continue, let me introduce our two guest speakers. Professor Seeram Ramakrishna, Fellow of the Royal Academy of Engineering, Circular Economy Taskforce Chair. He is also the Director for the Center of Nanotechnology and Sustainability, as well as a Professor at the Department of Mechanical Engineering, NUS. With his extensive research in the field of circular economy and sustainability, he'll be sharing with us material efficiency strategies for a low-carbon future. Our second speaker, Mr. Leonard, is the Singapore Director of Ramboll Studio Dreiseitl. His academic background and design interests lay at the juncture between man and environment, with the aim of finding a long-term sustainable balance between them. Some of the notable projects the studio has taken on are the Bishan Ang Mo Kio Park, Kampong Admiralty, and Jurong Lake Garden West. He'll be sharing with us the symbiosis of landscape and architecture. So the forum is divided into two segments. The first segment focuses on the students' sharing of their thesis projects, followed by a Q&A. And in the second segment, we will invite the guest speakers to share their research and practice, followed by the last dialogue session. So for the audience streaming in from YouTube, the chat will be open for any questions that you have, and we will try our best to bring them to the panel. So without further ado, let us invite our first speaker, Keok, to share about his thesis on e-waste as a potential resource. He aims to close and transform the man-made technical cycle of e-waste into a circular economy. The good machine. Keok, please.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Keok. Today I'll be sharing about my project called The Good Machine, Urban Mind for Disassembly and Reassembly of E-Waste. Sorry, I'm encountering some technical difficulties right now, but please give me a moment.
My name is Vivienne. I'm here today to share with you my take on Singapore's water story, which seeks to explore and expound on hydrosocial values as the next frontier of resilient urban development in Singapore. Water has always and still is our Achilles heel. So set against the context of resource constraints, land scarcity, intense urban developments, climate change, and external political uncertainties, Singapore has always been very prudent about her water use. Right from the onset, we have had numerous river cleanups and water-saving campaigns that targets domestic water use. A widespread sprawl of grey infrastructure to manage this is also very prominent in our built environment. We unwittingly distance ourselves from these water channels, and the current economic and hydrological approach of valuing water only serves to worsen our careless attitudes. We know of the annual dengue epidemics, the ever-persistent littering issues, rising water prices, 1 in 100-year flash floods. Yet not enough responsibility is taken over these issues that straddle the economic, physical, environmental, and social realms. So looking to our existing repository of grey infrastructure, it already is very physically pervasive in the built environment and might be considered the main spines along which new communities can be fostered. Here, we have the spatial distribution of all major canal networks in Singapore and subdivided into 6 regions. Totaling 180 kilometers in length, it permeates every neighborhood several times over. This demonstrates the large variety of site conditions that canals permeate, meaning that my approach had to be based on resource flows before contextualizing it to the site. So here we have the systems diagram, which amalgamates the issues turned opportunities when we reframe their uses. At the core of this closed water loop is the hydrosocial paradigm. It pivots from the decentralized model to complement the existing centralized water management model in actively engaging the community at large to have a more direct stake and part to play in securing Singapore's water supplies. The 6 hydrosocial values help to reinforce the closed water loop, namely playful learning, recreational enjoyment, identity fostering, opportunistic upcycling, education and skill sharing, and sustainable consumption. So herein, my thesis posits that water governance needs to consider each unique instance of use in the community to resolve existing pollution, flooding issues, and surging water demands, while also building up communities' resilience and ownerships of their waters. This can be done through mobilizing a series of land, water, urban topologies to synchronize water sensibilities along the vast network of canals, activating them and their borders into amphibious urban commons. So the variety of key interventions are categorized by the nature of their outreach and engagement, specifically into these 3 types. The first being nodal intersections, second being decentralized community activities with reimagined residential infrastructure, and the third being industrial cultural outreach. So along nodal intersections, physical infrastructures like flyovers and deeper canal boundaries were identified as potential sites to blur the hard boundary between canal and street. Introducing hydraulic play pockets would transform the space into an interactive waterscape where land use planning parameters allow. Complementing the waterscape are water aeration gateway towers, which doubles as a watery spectacle while cleaning water at the same time. Viewing platforms encircle these structures that tower over the landscape, pulling up from the ground what would otherwise have floated off unnoticed. These interventions come together to form engaging water activities to help blur the boundary between canal channels, while engaging the community in meaningful water-centric play. To further permeate the residential communities situated along the existing canal, 3 key modifications to reimagine existing infrastructure can be introduced. The first upgrades community gardens into aquaculture towers, which introduces a closed water reuse system along canals while improving garden yields. So these aqua commons provide educational opportunities for the community while reinforcing the communal spirit in helping to keep our water resources clean. Another upgrade can be implemented at existing multi-story car parks. These places are often shunned and underutilized due to their pollutive nature. Working within existing footprints, these spaces can be revitalized to engage these decentralized water-centric communities, as well as be explicit demonstrations of stormwater management amongst the HDB hardscape. So indeed, the proposed hydroparklet has the capacity to play the more institutional role in this myriad of interventions within the residential landscape, gradually shifting towards hydrosocial sensibilities. The third upgrade that can be integrated into the waterscape happens at litter collection centers within neighborhoods. Reconfiguring the Bano brick boxes that handle waste disposal, the stench and smell may be overcome with the introduction of the pneumatic waste disposal system. This frees up space for play structures and water features to be installed, creating an inviting playscape for children to partake in cleaning their waters while sorting the litter retrieved from the water streams. The litter sorting playground not only introduces the element of play into water cleaning, It too imbues in the younger generation the preciousness of water. The third type of outreach and engagement comes in the form of industrial cultural reinvigoration, whereby products from the various processes and vacated spaces are repurposed for community engagement. On the left bank, we see the spaces that straddle the light industrial buildings transformed into 3 types of waste recycling facilities, which outputs are used to power the thermal bath facilities, introducing social spaces while blurring the hard canal edge. On the opposite side, the site of Kallang Distripark anchors a proposed new water-cum-brewing facility. Readapting large warehouses to house the machinery, the space also accommodates tours and waterscapes for a more experiential tour experience. The plethora of water-centric activities to enliven the otherwise shunned hardscape challenges the ingrained hydrological approach we have towards our water resources. It introduces and opens up many possibilities into otherwise underused spaces and disjointed communities. Water, as my thesis posits, is the most suitable medium to plug the leaks in our sense of belonging within residential communities and the public at large. Overall, my thesis paints a fantastical scenario, which I believe Singapore is en route to achieve, with a realignment of water and urban planning policies in our approach to resilient urban development. It is in these lofty ideals that we should have faith in and continue to aspire towards for future generations to come. Thank you.
Role as a health machine to better microbial health. The Microville. Let's welcome Shirley.
My thesis aims to subvert the traditional relationship between architecture and health, specifically with regards to microbes. Recent studies have informed us that man and microbe share a mutually beneficial relationship with one another. 99% of microbes are found to contribute to human health. In return, these microbes feed on waste products of man for survival within the human body and the environment. However, architecture has consistently regarded microbes as disease-bringing agents that are to be repelled at all costs. This indiscriminate sterilization of microbes has contributed to a rise of immune diseases amongst the urban population. My thesis therefore seeks to subvert this traditional legacy of architecture and health by designing for spaces that facilitate interactions between man and microbe in this ecosystem. Given that microbes may become pathogenic when overgrown, especially on surfaces, airborne transmission ought to be the primary mode of acquisition. It also means that selected beneficial microbes that are to be bred in the living environment should be grown at a controlled manner. Thus, in light of how homes constitute a huge proportion of our lives, the thesis will design a microbe-friendly environment for the urban population through a reinterpretation of the domestic home called Microville. To begin with, there are a total of 7 microbes beneficial to the urbanites, each with its own respective health benefits. Because of our differing genetic makeup and lifestyles, individuals have different health conditions and hence would need to acquire certain microbes more than the others to improve their health. So these are the 7 personas that show the 7 main health profiles stemming from the different lifestyles amongst the urban population. So evidently, they each need to acquire a different set of microbes as shown on the second row here. Individuals can acquire the respective microbes into their body through inhalation, ingestion, and touch. The efficiency of these methods depends on first, the material and topography of a surface. This is an index that reflects the optimal microscopic topography and material for each of the microbes. Moving on, the second factor will be the direction and height at which airborne microbes are supplied to the human breathing zone, which is then dependent on the human posture. So evidently, microbes are essential to humans. Yet, what about humans to microbes? This is a diagram that illustrates the ecosystem involving man and the 7 beneficial microbes. So all the microbes may need to consume human waste as a nutrient for growth, as shown by the brown arrows, through the act of breaking them down into compost. The composting process has a total of 4 stages. Different microbes thrive across these different stages of composting. Few microbes require other human byproducts of survival as well, such as carbon dioxide or dead skin, as shown by the pink arrows. In return, humans then acquire these microbes via the 3 transmission methods. As the composting cycle is clearly the most important element, it would then serve as the backbone to the design of Microville. Moving on, I'll now explain how this composting cycle is integrated into the core of my design. To start off, there will be a total of 7 microbe niche composting containers underground, each for one of the 7 beneficial microbes. They are arranged according to the composting sequence from stage 1 to stage 4. Microbes will be grown within their own composting containers with a supply of human waste piped from the sewage containers of the residential blocks underground. Each of these niche composting containers, they will also be paired with a microbe zone above ground as well. So these microbe zones above ground, they are actually the communal facilities of the condominium. Within each pairing, byproducts from the programmatic users of the microbe zone will also be supplied as nutrients for the growth of the microbes underground. Microbes that are grown underground in these containers will eventually be released above ground for intake by the residents at the microbe zones as well as at the residential areas. There are 2 ways in which the microbe zones work. So in the first system, as aforementioned, the human byproducts of the microbe zone will be supplied as nutrients to the microbes that are grown underground. So for example, in this zone here, carbon dioxide will be absorbed from the basketball court from the ceiling nozzles and then delivered to the composting container underground for microbial growth. Microbes grown within these containers will subsequently be supplied back to the basketball court at face level for acquisition. On the other hand, in the second system, it is the actions of the humans in the microbe zone that accelerates microbial growth in the composting container. So for instance, a playground with this carousel is connected to a tunnel underground and it is designed in this zone. So using this carousel will activate the tunnel and catalyze microbial growth within the composting container. Microbes grown within here will eventually be supplied back to the playground through the nozzles from the top. Following this, microbes from the microbe zones are pumped to the residential blocks via a microbe riser, which in turn distribute microbes to the individual housing units. There are a total of 3 types of units provided, so there's 2, 3, and 4 room units. Microbes are released into the different living spaces from the pipes via microbe nozzles. And the height and position at which these microbes are released will be dependent on the human posture in each living space. For instance, microbes will be supplied from the top for a sitting position and supplied from the side for a lying posture in the bedroom. Last, surface transmission will only be optimized for surfaces with high transmission rates, such as the shower, the doorknob, as well as the towel rail. This furniture will be redesigned to encourage surface transmission, and they will be pre-installed in every housing unit. The touch surfaces, which are in blue, will be designed with planar surfaces that are optimal for microbe deposition, and they will also be clad with materials that are favorable for the growth of the respective microbes to be acquired. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. Now let us invite Keith again to share with us his thesis on e-waste as a potential resource, the good machine. Keith, please.
Hi, good morning. I apologize for the technical difficulties. But my project today is the good machine, and I'll be presenting about disassembly and reassembly of e-waste. So this project is an exploration and a critique of the role of technology in relation to the environment. It is also a subversion of the consumerist notion of what is a good machine to one that is sustainable, designed for repair and disassembly. This project also deep dives into the issue of e-waste in Singapore. As the city aims to become a technology capital in the near future, e-waste becomes an inevitable issue. And in fact, e-waste is currently the fastest growing waste stream in the world, with Singapore being the #1 largest e-waste generator per capita in Southeast Asia. A Straits Times survey in 2019 found out that only 1 in 10 Singaporeans properly recycle electronics. And an NEA survey in 2018 found out that only 6% of our e-waste is recycled. And another Barogreen survey found out that 7 in 10 Singaporeans hoard their electronics. The effects of e-waste is a growing concern. Beyond the landfill constraints of Singapore, the rise of technology globally is causing a greater demand for raw mineral resources. Extraction industries and a lack of proper e-waste management is causing great environmental, health, and ethical consequences. Singapore is currently adopting the EPR framework, which is the Extended Producer Responsibility Framework, which manages e-waste through producers such as StarHub and Singtel. And these producers, they provide e-waste bins across the island, which is then transported to local recycling firms for treatment and recycling on a nationwide scale. As the stats have shown earlier, the EPR framework is not 100% effective. In fact, many still do not properly recycle their electronics due to factors such as lack of data security and the lack of awareness. The producers that manage the e-waste recycling also, most of them may not have the sustainability in their best interests. Invisibility, coupled by a lack of accountability, contributes to this endless cycle of e-waste negligence. So instead of a legislative approach, I envision a new architectural typology where stakeholders involved can come together to create a circular economy of shared knowledge and resources, while being directly engaged with the public. This is the urban mind, which tackles the root issues through architecture, encompassing placemaking, collaboration between R&D and repair sectors for the right to repair movement, and allowing proper data disposal for the masses. This is a comparison between the current EPR framework and the proposed circular framework. The EPR framework comprises of a linear chain of stakeholders that leads to an out of sight, out of mind attitude, whereas the circular framework allows the streamlining of resources through multiple stakeholders that ensure sustainable production of electronics. By directly engaging the public in e-waste, the primary resource pool can then be used to support eco-tech companies, generating public awareness and also tech accountability. The site that I've chosen is at Punggol Digital District, which is crucial for Singapore's digital economy. The plot that I've chosen is an intersection between residential, business, educational, and a green corridor at all 4 corners. So the 3D diagram on the right illustrates the program in relation to the 4 corners, where the users' electronics in their different stages of disassembly and surrounding context can be in harmony towards a shared circular economy. These diagrammatic relations show the network relationships between the architecture and the surrounding, both externally and internally. So the architecture is expressed as a machine, and the various parts that connect with one another from the basement, ground plane, and office levels. And this machine is sustainable through net zero energy and also designed for disassembly. Using the tectonics of steel frame and timber panels, the producer and recycling facilities consist of a flexible frame with subtractive timber panels, which can be configured based on their interior program. And alternatively, the repair and public facilities consist of reused and refurbished shipping containers stacked or additive to the steel frame. So this interplay between subtractive and additive structure expresses this circular nature of the program. The urban mind is situated beside the green corridor, where the public is directly engaged with sustainable consumerism, as well as repair services. This section illustrates the vertical relationship where e-waste is consolidated for sorting and dismantling in the basement, then the recycling awareness on the ground level through e-waste pavilion, and then the facilities for recycling and repairing electronics on the above ground level. This shows the biophilic central spine that draws the public in, and it serves as the main collection center for e-waste. The link bridges above the collection center connects to the different sectors for remanufacture, recycling, and repair. The right to repair movement is a partnership between the producer and the repair sector. Alternatively, ICT electronics can be collected on ground level then transported underground for data disposal, and then upwards towards the repair hub or recycling facilities through these link bridges as well. This diagonal axis on the ground level provides a thoroughfare from the main business district to the residential and educational areas. And this serves as an urban center for the public under the giant canopy of solar panels. The repair hub, which houses repair workshops and offices, they have configurable layouts made up of restored shipping containers, and they overlook the second-hand market beside the green corridor. Lastly, the recycling facility is not just industrial, but it engages with the educational facility across to educate and inform the public about proper e-waste disposal, consumption, and stewardship. So to wrap up, e-waste is a pressing issue for our generation. Beyond top-down measures, architecture can be a tool to inspire change through placemaking, bringing communities and corporate silos to work in harmony and create a truly smart city. Thank you.
Thank you to our student speakers. Let us have a round of applause for all of them. And now it's time for the next segment, the first dialogue, where we really get to understand how the students approach the projects and the challenges that were met along the way. I would also like to invite our guest speakers to join us in this conversation. So the audiences streaming from YouTube, please do not hesitate to ask us any questions. So to Keith, Shirley, and Vivienne, could you tell us more about the decision to venture into the respective themes of your projects? And how did the venture towards new domains of knowledge outside the discipline shape your entire process? Any one of you can start first.
Maybe I'll start first. So for me, I ventured into this field, this microbe field, because first of all, I always have this personal interest in the medical field. And especially this COVID-19 pandemic has in particular brought into sharp focus the duality of microbes. When microbes such as the COVID-19 virus, they are undeniably deadly to man. Yet, ironically, only microbes can eliminate and protect us from these viruses as well. Where for my research, they are actually very important, or rather the most important determinant of our immune system. So all of these, elements kind of just drive me into approaching this topic for my thesis project. And also because since the theme, so to answer your second question, right, like the second part of the question, so since the theme of my project requires an extensive wealth and depth of biomedical knowledge, my process is very much research and experiment driven. So for me, I first went to find out, of course, how humans can acquire microbes before further investigating the factors that affect the efficiency of these transmission methods. And in order to help me translate into architecture, the factors should preferably be parameters that are translatable, meaning like materiality, dimensions, as well as ergonomics, so things that are more relatable to architecture. So they then constitute the design parameters I can experiment or work with throughout my explorations. So for instance, in my project, I found that surface transmission is encouraged for a particular microbe when the topography of the surface is microbe specific. So meaning I can actually vary the dimensions of a material or the dimensions of a pattern to allow me to control the type of microbe to be encouraged or transmitted along a surface. Yeah.
That's interesting. Actually, I think we have a question from the YouTube chat. Also, to the guest speakers, Prof. Seeram and Leonard, if you have any questions that you have for the speakers, just chip in anytime. Yeah, so one of the YouTube questions was for Shirley, wondering if you have seen any precedents for harvesting of the microbial tech you have presented. It's really cool, wondering if it has been done anywhere.
Harvesting of microbial tech. Let me think for a while.
Okay, we can get back to you later. No worries.
Can I give a comment?
Yes, please.
First, I like to congratulate all the 3 presenters. Very fascinating topic. If you represent the future of architecture, then I'm really looking forward to the future. Fantastic effort, right? My particular question is posed to Shirley. Right, I found her topic extremely interesting, Microville. You partially answered my question, and it's got with respect to less desirable pathogens, less desirable microbes, right? You said that you can design surfaces to promote some propagation of some microbes, but how do you design it to exclude undesirable microbes? Because the terminology, right, the microbes has already holds a negative connotations for the general public, right? So how do you assuage their fears by saying, look, there's this way of excluding the bad guys?
Okay. So for this, in order to do this project, I actually went to do a lot of research, and then I found that materials can both eliminate as well as encourage certain microbes. So how they can eliminate or target specific harmful microbes is actually through the design, mainly through the design of the surface of the texture of the surfaces. Like for instance, some of the surfaces, they actually, if you zoom it in like microscopically, they actually look like needles. So there's this row of needles along this textured surface that allows us to kill off microbes. And usually these pathogenic microbes, most of the time, they are actually bigger than those beneficial microbes that I have presented. So you can imagine rows and rows of these needles, such that when these pathogenic microbes they land on the surface, these needles will then poke through these microbes and kill these pathogenic microbes. And then if, right, let's say the dimensions between these needles are able to accommodate the size of the beneficial microbes, you will not only enable us to grow these beneficial microbes like between these needles or columns, but also allow us to penetrate the pathogenic microbes. Yeah, so that's based on my knowledge.
And no worries, Shirley, I will help you out. So, as Shirley was saying, what they call quantum and nanoscience-led antimicrobial, antiviral technologies are now much more established. And there are, of course, when you are talking about buildings and large-scale infrastructure, one of the key factors is cost, and second factor is how safe it is for all the public. So in the food sector, there's a lot of microbial based proteins and other helpful peptides are actually extracted, and they are now already part of our diet. So I just want to give a kind of a little bit of lift for Shirley, saying that she's not totally off the thinking, but of course, as Leonard pointed out, he has lots of experience in this field. We would need to think through carefully so that the system is scalable. At the same time, it is easy to use. And the answer lies in terms of integrating. There's a lot of new developments that are happening in other fields, and that can be easily absorbed by the architects, and then they can actually implement. That's my feeling. But I also want to support the other two. They also made a very good presentations, Keith and Vivienne. Because I'm involved in that extended producer responsibility scheme. I'm an advisor to our government, and these are big waste streams, and Singapore mandated that we have to figure out. So, well, I just had to buy stocks in Keok, because if he set up an urban mine, he will be very rich.
Maybe I've got a question for Vivienne. All right, and this is a field of interest to me because we have been an active contributor to this dialogue about changing people's mindset, right? And that's what you're doing in your design. You're trying to change people's mindset and their relationship with the water element, which is what the PUB has been doing for a long time with the ABC Waters, right? They have actually moved. They have moved beyond engineering, right, to engage with the community. So this hydrosocial theme that you delved in is extremely relevant, and it seems that you have taken it the next step. Yeah, you have you have really much more highly activated in your approach, right? You have made all the processes visible, and I think that is something to be commended. I would like though to see, that I think our society can do better in terms of how we take care of our environment. For example, if I walk around, there's still a lot of littering lying on the ground, right? And if this idea they can carry forward, right, beyond just water into the wider society and how we take care and take ownership of our wider environment, I think it'll be really, really beneficial for Singapore.
Yeah, absolutely. Vivienne, so you are more like an engineer than an architect, the way you presented. So, well, we are now combining both engineering and architecture, right? School of Design and Environment. I really encourage you guys to, all the architects that are attending this webinar. My view is there's lots of good ideas and innovations, both in architecture and other fields. If you can find a way to reach out to the other people, integrate, you can definitely come up with a lot of impactful innovations, what Vivienne has articulated through her presentation.
Thank you, Prof. Seeram. Okay, maybe Keith, you can talk about how you grapple with the new domains of knowledge, because architecture is a multidisciplinary discipline, but for you to go beyond that, to really understand the flow of e-waste and how it can be transformed into a circular economy, where do you begin? How did you actually conduct your research, and what were some of the struggles that you faced? Also, did the project turn out you expected it to be?
That is a very good question. Actually, as an architecture student, I'm very limited by what I know. And the topic of e-waste is so complex, and it deals with so many different stakeholders and like other industries that sometimes I feel like I don't know enough. But at the same time, as an architecture student, like I have to be optimistic that architecture can make a change, and through placemaking and through engaging people to spaces, we can make a change in these societal issues. Yeah, and I actually went down to a recycling company and I sort of like knocked on their door and asked them, hey, can I interview you like about what you guys are doing and what is happening in the industry for e-waste recycling? And they very generously offered me an interview, and that's how I managed to get some sort of insider information about what's currently happening. And even after my thesis, because I managed to talk to sort of like a director in an electronics company, and I found out that actually the situation is very fluid and it's not it has changed even like in the past year and the past few months. So actually a lot of the things that I don't know, right? Yeah, like it's because it's actually being developed right now. So yeah, but I am definitely open to discussion and seeing how an urban mind can actually be incorporated in Singapore, because I feel that it is I think it's a potential for beyond just e-waste bins. Like there is somewhere that people can go and electronics can be visible and e-waste can be visible to the public. Yeah.
Well, Keith, I sympathize with you that when you find there's so much knowledge out there, even for us after so many years, we still find the same challenge because the knowledge is innovations are growing worldwide. So, but I don't think that can be a discouragement. It can be actually good encouragement. And just as you did, you actually went down to meet the company CEO or other leaders, and then you pick up the right connections. Just to support what you're saying, there is a company now, Alba, which has been asked, designated by Singapore government to collect all the electronic waste in Singapore. So it's mandatory from 1st of July. So we are now 10th of July. That means 10 days ago, this particular legal force is in place. Alba is collecting Singapore island-wide. Same they're doing in Hong Kong. It's a German company. So second part is the recycling or urban mining of e-waste is it has a big value chain and supply chain. So those who are interested, my suggestion would be they're using lots of advanced technologies. So you can start with Alba or other organizations, but certainly there is room for those who want to get in this part of the domain for innovation. Yeah, I think it is a good place. Other reason, I don't want to take too much time. The other main reason is there is total depletion of minerals that are available on planet Earth. So that's another reason why this urban mining is becoming sharper. And 95% of all the important elements in electronic waste actually produced by only 1 or 2 countries. And that is a geopolitical issue. That's the reason most countries are pushing towards resilience and also closing the loop within the country. So that's where the urban mining comes. So I think it's a combination of all what Kit said, Vivienne as well as Shirley. The answer lies in all what you presented. Yeah.
And if I may add to that, Keith, yours is especially relevant, right? As in an environment where we are converting all our cars to electric cars, right? I see in the future, how are we gonna reuse or get rid of these batteries? It's gonna be a huge challenge because we're not just talking about small computer parts. We're talking about, millions of cars, each of them containing hundreds of kilograms of these highly polluted batteries. Whoever comes out with a really viable answer that is commercially viable, I think is in for a killing. Leonard,
you also can tell them about all these solar panels everybody's mounting.
Yeah, exactly. So very extremely relevant, right? So I applaud you for taking this on, even though you may not know everything, but that's the beauty of academia, right? You don't have to know everything, right? But you can keep pushing the boundaries and proposing new innovative ideas.
I think we're seeing a lot of synergy happening, which is really amazing and awesome. So I think just to move the session along, maybe Viv, you could give your quick answer to the question that Shirley has been asking. And then after that, we'll move into Leonard and Prof. Seeram's presentation. So I think you can already kind of see that there are many, our students present one perspective that is very hopeful, and like Keith said, sometimes can have a lot of depth of knowledge as well, but that doesn't mean that our proposals are any less valuable. So this kind of, I think the purpose of Leonard's and Prof. Seeram's presentation is kind of tied to a question that someone has asked in the chat, which is, what are the possible limitations to realizing these proposals? If on paper, these proposals do produce positive outcomes for our environment and culture, is there friction in realizing them? So another way to think of this is what are the different perspectives that you as practitioners and much more experienced people in the field can give to kind of act as a parallel to our own. Yeah, so maybe that can kind of shape your presentations moving forward. Yeah, so maybe Viv, you could answer Shireen's question just to round up this session, this part.
Yep. So for me, like my interest in water actually came about because of some exposure I had in one of my internships. So I was exposed to like doing a paper publication actually for PUB, and they were actually dealing with the with the issue of inland flooding and coastal protection. So it got me really excited about this topic because it was interesting to see it from like an urban economist's point of view as well as a researcher's point of view. Whereas coming from architectural training and background, there were a lot of ideas there were a lot of similar ideas from both fields on the same topic, but I think what Emma just talked about, also the perspectives is very different and the concerns are very different. So which led me to further investigate this topic with my thesis to try and bring together different concerns of different stakeholders and different expertise to try and put together a very like ideal scenario of what water can do for the environment as well as our country.
Thank you, Shirley. Thank you, Vivienne. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, I think now it's time to move on to the next segment where we hear from our guests some of their practices and research that they've been doing. Okay, so let us first invite our first speaker, Professor Seeram Ramakrishna, to talk about the material efficiency strategies for a low carbon future. Prof. Seeram, please.
Thanking Yuan. Can I share my slides? Can you allow
yes.
me to? Yes.
Hold on.
You just need to allow me to share the slides. That's it. Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot, Xian and Emma, for having me on this fantastic EMAC show 2021. And I chose this topic, materials efficiency strategies for low carbon future. And as a kind of disclosure, I chair the Circular Economy Taskforce at the National University of Singapore. I also advise our Ministry of Sustainability and Environment. And I'm also a panel member for UNESCO expert group on EGU 2030. Now, the time given to me is 10 minutes. I have lots of slides. All the audience, you do not need to worry. If you need a copy of my slides, I'm happy to share with you. That's an email address there. Also, Emma has placed my YouTube lecture on this particular webinar platform. So you could also see a full-length presentation. But I will stick to 10 minutes so that I give you the main bullet points. Why this particular sustainability, circular economy thinking is now very important. One reason is it has been clearly documented now. The humanity is facing a stark reality. The total carbon emissions in the atmosphere is the highest in 4 million years. And of course, the graph below shows which countries are contributing to that. And as recent as a few months ago, or a few weeks ago, all the major countries around the world experienced high temperatures. And here is a wildfire in California. Other one is, as presented by the first segment, 3 speakers, one of the key issues is the human beings with industrialization and a linear economy consuming more, also producing more waste. So there is a total solid waste increase on the planet and the biodiversity loss. That means the other species on planet Earth, they are reducing in number, but which are essential for well-being of human beings. And here is an example where it's a nice beach, but you could see waters are receding, again attributed to the climate change issues. And then main point is 2020, that is last year. According to the estimates, global human-made mass exceeds all the living biomass on planet Earth. So 2020. And right below, that's an image I took yesterday for this seminar. Typically, that's how we dispose solid waste, household solid waste from the residential blocks as well as the commercial buildings. So every day such mountains of solid waste is being disposed. So these are more details, what is causing an economic value. I would not spend time on this one. The fundamentally, so far, last 200 years, humanity progressed well and had a good standard of living, but also contributed to air pollution, resources depletion. Like what Keith said, if you do not do urban mining, then we have to rely more and more mining from the planet Earth, but there is a limited number of resources available on the planet Earth to feed the linear economy. So also eventually leading to the harmful health and other effects. So this is more other very specific to Singapore and other low-lying countries. Sea levels are rising, and it is predicted if we continue in this way, it could be a somewhat serious matter for countries like Singapore because of rising sea levels. So now sustainability, because of that, is very important. It is defined as ensuring good living conditions for all of us right now, as well as ensuring good living conditions for the future generations. And the details in the second definition, it's about reduction of carbon emissions, as well as circular solid waste management to reduce pollution and waste generation, to alleviate resources depletion and environmental deterioration, to regenerate biodiversity, to abate the rising sea levels and extreme weathers for the well-being of humans and preserving the earth for the future generations. So that's basically a broad and a deeper definition. All this story started in 1972 is by a Club of Rome, where some of the thought leaders, they gathered together. They asked themselves the question, if we pursue the industrialization and linear economic growth, are there limits to the growth by the planet Earth? So 1972, that means most of the audience that are listening to this talk, probably you're not even born by that time, but they were discussing in that time. Much later, 87, United Nations report came. 2015, Paris Agreement talks about United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, where Singapore is one of the signatory. How Singapore, as well as 193 countries, wanted to make sure we progress while helping everybody on planet Earth. So these are more details. I won't go into those details. I will straight away go into now an example related to Singapore and also this webinar. So that's, of course, a beautiful Singapore we all live. Those international participants do come and visit us. It's a beautiful place and fantastic people here. You can network with them. So Singapore Green Plan that was announced recently, it focuses on two important aspects. One is reducing the carbon emissions. So there are specified targets, and Singapore aims to reach carbon neutrality by 2100. Second one is reducing the solid waste, the amount of waste that goes to the landfill to be reduced. And here the domestic rates, how Singapore want to reduce, as well as the non-domestic recycling rates. Now, with that background, I would like to connect to the architecture students, or architects worldwide. These students who are actually organizing this webinar, they are very fortunate. They are educated in the first zero energy building of Singapore, and that's at the National University of Singapore, SDE4. And Singapore aims to have 80% of the new buildings to have a zero energy credentials. Worldwide, there are 500 zero energy buildings so far. And the trend is to build those more and more, and also transform the existing buildings to be more carbon neutral and zero energy. So here you heard me saying energy, energy, energy. What does that mean? It means operational energy of the building, we like to minimize it to zero. That means that somehow the building generates own energy. So the total energy that is required to operate the building equal to the amount of energy the building is able to generate. In this case, you see solar panels on the rooftop. There are many other ways you can improve the energy requirement by energy efficiency and cooling systems and other architectural features. Key point here is these things are realized by integrating knowledge of the architects as well as engineers. So this is where I believe interdisciplinary way of working together, cross-boundary among the architects and engineers is a way forward for us to realize sustainable future buildings. So now I connect back to a key topic of my talk, which is materials. Why? So far here we focused on how to make the building zero energy. In other words, operational energy. But there is also one more factor. Are these materials circular? Are these buildings have a minimum circularity gap? What does that mean? It means the materials used in constructing the building, are they having a high quality carbon credentials? So that's the question. So when towards the end of life or end of usage of the building, how circular is the building? How easy it is to recycle, upcycle, change to something else. So that's what we call circularity of buildings or circularity gap. So in addition to zero energy, which is focused on operational aspects, we also have to look at the total life cycle of the building. That's where the materials come in. So here is United Nations Environmental Program International Resources Panel. They recently released a report called Resource Efficiency Climate Change, Material Efficiency Strategies for Low Carbon Future. So main point here is, if you see here, 23% of global emissions worldwide are caused by the material sector. And within the materials, if you look at it, the buildings and concrete, cement, iron, steel, they contribute to the large proportion of material-related emissions in the world. That's why we need to look at not only operational aspects, we also have to look at the construction, design of the building so that they're much more environmentally friendly. So how do you do that? Is use less materials by design. So this is where my co-speaker, Leonard, will tell you the future is do more by doing less. So that means you have less materials, but you perform as a building much better. And probably substitute the materials with the better materials like timber, bamboo, or wood. And fabrication yield improvements. Singapore already doing prefabrication technologies. There are other ways to improve the overall construction of the buildings. The other one is the more intensive use of the buildings. It is about per capita usage of the building. Is also a very important factor when you want to improve the circularity, material efficiency of the buildings. The other one is how do you extend the product lifetime? And the other one is at the end of use, can we recover, remanufacture, and reuse components? And the last one is end of life recovery and recycling is where the first three speakers, they were talking about using microbes, using electronic waste, and looking at the hydrological cycles, how they can make the whole material efficiency and building efficiency much better. So there are more details. I won't go into the details, but I just want to show one example where this kind of gives you a clear example. So if you look at this particular busy schematic or illustration, I have a G7 countries, the other one China and India. And these vertical bars show you 2016 life cycle emissions associated with the homes. So the green one is the emissions from operational energy use. Other one is a material cycle emissions. So when we say zero energy building, we are talking about this particular green energy, operational energy. When we are talking about total circularity of the building, we're also looking at the material associated emissions. So if we apply material efficiency strategies in the G7 countries, we could reduce the emissions associated with homes and buildings by 35%. So when it comes to countries like China and India, the potential to reduce harmful emissions is actually 60%. So this is where I believe architects and engineers can reimagine buildings, come up with the future buildings that would have both operational and life cycle emissions much lower than what they are right now. So that's basically illustration. These are all to prove. These are based on lots of details and facts and information. There's lots of information there. So I wouldn't go through those details, but I like to just give you that here is the efficiency strategies normally used for residential buildings. One could look at. The other one, this one. So type of materials that go into the buildings, for example, there are a variety of materials. Some have a higher potential, some have a lower potential. So that's where we mean you can substitute the materials in a better design so that you are overall improving the carbon credentials as well as sustainability of the buildings. That's basically what I want to say. So, well, it's not only buildings, the same thought processes are happening in many products and services that humanity is using them. So here is a watch by a Swiss company, well-known company, Panerai. They have a 98.6% recycled materials that involve steel, titanium, silicon, and plastics. So I guess I just want to say for all of you who are budding architects, I think future is waiting for you. And of course, it's up to you to make the future. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my experience and excitement with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Seeram. Okay, that was very insightful and it really probes us the way we think about built environment and what it actually takes to be low carbon beyond just looking at the circular economy. So I think now we'd like to invite Mr. Leonard, Singapore Director of Ramboll Studio Dreiseitl, to share with us the symbiosis of landscape and architecture. So Mr. Leonard, please.
Thank you, Shirley. Let me share my screen. Let me know if you see it, please.
Yeah, we can see the screen. Yeah.
Okay, let me start from this page. So this is a picture of a photo of, it can be any city in the world, right? But many of our cities look like this, right? And if you see that, you know, there's very little space for nature. It's just dense urban jungle full of people going about their lives, right? You know, looking at this picture, I feel that we can do better. We have, as a society, you know, really neglected our environment to a large part, causing a lot of problems, like flooding, you know, due to climate change, due to the way we design our environments, right? Due to our lack of foresight. And this has really led to some serious problems for the community, even for the economy. When you have a flood like this happening, it really paralyzed the entire parts of the city. And there's further, you know, consequences. It is, you know, it creates poor living environment, right? You can tell from the records that's been posted lately that every year we are seeing new highs in our temperatures, right? And in Singapore's context, that is not a good place to be, right? We are already extremely humid. So these rising temperatures just adds, you know, to the problems that we are facing. Which brings me to the topic, right? I believe there is a solution, right? I believe we can do better, but I think the solution would require us working together, right? As architects, and I assume I'm addressing mostly to architects today, right? We are partners. I'm a landscape architect, right? And I feel that our closest partner, right, in the built environment are architects. And in order to be able to have good solutions, we really need to work closely. We need to integrate our design. And I'm about to show you a series of projects that we have done, right, that incorporate some of this thinking. So this is a project we actually did with Zaha did, and this was a city scale master plan for a city in China called Zhengzhou. Right? What makes this master plan fascinating is that, you know, we tried to move away from the breed of a traditional city planning, right, and try to be inspired by new ways of organizing ourselves, right, with nature, from nature. So instead of having very predictable urban spaces, right, we create spaces where, you know, where it is fully integrated. The green and blue infrastructure is very closely tied with the urban fabric. But not only that, there are pockets of surprise because, you know, there's no regularity about this design, right? The design deforms and adapts to the surroundings and to the environment, to the topography. So this is an example of working at a city scale with close collaboration between architects and landscape architects. The next project is a perceptible scale. And this we did also, Zaha did in Chengdu, China. It's currently being built, right? Its name is actually called Project Unicorn, and it's a high-tech park. What we did was we studied closely how to blend in with the green and blue infrastructure across all of Chengdu, right? And how to draw it into this project. And then we create a series of landscape structures, right, in relation to the architectural language, and see how we can deploy it, right, in a cohesive and integrated manner. And then we create typologies, right, that can be deployed within each of these buildings, right? For example, the roof of the buildings or the podium blocks, right? Depending on the envisaged use, we'll have a series of landscape typologies that we can piece together and form into a larger experience. And then to look at it visually and see how we can integrate the water systems to make it work holistically, right? How we can integrate the biodiversity and how we can make this as a truly full integration between architecture and landscape. This is a rendering produced for visualization during the schematic phase, and you can see that, you know, without the landscape, the environment would be very different. It would look a lot harsher, right? The landscape brings this softness to it, but not just visually, right? It draws people out into the space, right? It encourages nature to propagate. For example, we provide habitats for avian life and all that, right? And, you know, it provides a beautiful backdrop. This is another visualization. It's currently being built, right? And hopefully within 5 years, you'll see a semblance of this. At a building scale, it's a project we did with Woha Architects in Singapore. They were the lead architects, we were the landscape architects. I'm sure most of you have heard about this. This was actually called an integrated hub, and there were many functions embedded into this hub. It was mostly catering to seniors, which living on a block on the left. But there were many medical facilities, right? Clinics, daycare centers, senior centers, and then there's a transport hub at the bottom, supermarket. So it's like almost like a one-stop shop for living, where you can find out most of your daily needs here. But what we needed was something to tie all this together, to bring all the users together, and that was a landscape, right? We created a terrace landscape in relation to the architects, right? And we embedded a comprehensive stormwater management system within this landscape. So all the water that was collected was treated, detained, recycled for irrigation or for programs and aesthetics before it's discharged as cleaner water into the public systems. This is actually a real photo of the building with the landscape. Try to imagine the building without the landscape. It will be a totally different environment. We designed to achieve certain KPIs. We wanted to achieve a certain green ratios, biodiversity, fruit species, right? Edible planting. We also designed for specific targets for the blue infrastructure, right? How much water did we detain? How much is treated? How much is used for irrigation, right? And eco ponds. And finally, the programs, right? How do we engage with the public? How many square foot of urban farming we're going to provide, event spaces, playgrounds. This was a rendering we did during the design stage. This was during construction and installation of the softscape. And this was largely 1 year after construction. The transformation, right? I mean, the transformation, and as a result, the livable quality has gone up drastically, if I may say so, right? The views you get from the block, the seniors staying in the public housing, right, has now transformed from really hard concrete structures into this beautiful, soft landscape. These are pictures of the embedded stormwater management system functioning during a storm event. They're all gravity fed. And this is a view from inside the clinic, right? We designed this space to be therapeutic, to help with the healing process. And a picture looking at all the terrace and layers. The next scale I talk about is the interior scale, right? There's also spaces to incorporate nature. So this one is a recently completed Park Royal Marina Bay. What we were asked to do was to retrofit the interior space to make it more livable, more welcoming, right? And to really soften the hard and harsh lines of the building. So we did the lobby area, the reception area, and also the back area where there's a lot of F&B. And this is actually a photo of very soon after completion. We're still waiting for the tree to grow and mature, but it has transformed the interiors totally. But this is only possible if there's a close collaboration between architects and landscape architects. And then finally, I move on to the object scale. This is where humans experience it the most, because it's really the human scale. This project was actually a design competition we did with Grimshaw and partners. And this was actually for the interior of an airport design and the reimagination of a future playground. I'm not sure how many have seen this, but this is actually an artwork we fabricated out of recycled rebars that we extracted from the pavements while we are redesigning these Jurong Lake Gardens. And actually, we did this in order to provoke thought for the visitors, right? And how we can do better, how we can do better as a society, how we can live more in harmony with nature. This is also a project that was completed quite a few years ago. It's actually Sungai Buloh, but it's really being designing objects that's really sensitive to the environment, but also makes you, but really the contrast in the architecture with the landscape really brings out the beauty that we can embrace in a design process. And finally, upcoming, this is a project we are currently doing. This is the expansion to the Mandai Zoo. And what you're looking at is actually a waterfall design over a car park and a drop-off area. So, you know, if we work closely together between a landscape architect and architect, we actually can make beautiful design for man and for nature. With that, I end my presentation.
Thank you, Leonard. That was a very, very interesting presentation. So now we have reached the last segment, and it's an opportunity for us to learn more about the challenges of translating ideas from design to execution, the reality versus ambition, and what we can do beyond academia in pursuit of our ambitions. So the first set of questions to both speakers. So do you feel that the environmentally responsive projects and regulations in Singapore achieve what they set out to be? So what's the reality and how have they shaped the built environment?
Strange, because I was really about to participate in another conference with exactly that topic, right? That's 2 weeks from now. And I was just preparing the materials for that. And it's interesting because I think we have made some baby steps as a society, right? In Singapore, there has been a drive, especially from the government, to embed some of this environmentally friendly design within our design profession, right? And you can see from ABC Waters, you can see from the initiative by NParks, you know. But we have got a long way to go, right? I think there's a lot more potential to explore. We have only just touched the surface, right? I would like very much for example, the landscape industry to just move away from the superficial, to really address the underlying, the functional, the engineering, right? Addressing problems, real problems.
Well, I think I must echo what Leonard said, but I think we also have to leverage, there's a lot of potential for world-leading examples Singapore can set. So I think there's a lot more dreaming can be done in terms of how we build high-rise building that's much more futuristic. And it also involves both commercial, residential, and industrial buildings. I think there's a huge potential. I would say that right now, our effectiveness and proactive way, it is leading edge, but I think we are still not completely leveraging our potential. So I think that's a lot more room for innovation. Until recently, we weren't using so much of, say, timber and bamboo, but now it's beginning to get into the buildings architecture. And there's a lot more other areas, how the ventilation systems can be designed much more futuristic, and also how we can integrate other technologies. I think that if we see what's the global view, is Singapore has been emulating the best practices around the world very well in the last 50 years. But moving forward, we can also help the world by showcasing our own path leading examples.
Thank you. Yeah, Emma, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so I actually wanted to ask. So, Prof. Seeram, in your presentation, you actually outlined quite a supported approach to design now. This whole idea of not simply thinking more deeply about where your materials come from, how it's processed, and where it goes when your material when your building inevitably becomes obsolete, or is it inevitable? I don't know. Maybe we can design for no such thing as obsolescence. So when you see all these proposals I don't know if you've seen any other architecture students' works, but what is how do you feel? Do you think like there's a limitation? Is it kind of futile that the amount of energy and material that goes into these buildings actually override our proposed sustainable outcome? And I think kind of tie in with Leonard sharing as well. I'm actually personally very interested in this blend of architecture and landscape. And I just wonder, now landscape could it be thought of as a material? Because the way we treat it, we import it from overseas, we pack it in a nursery, and then we dispense it where it's supposed to go. And of course we design for it, but it has become a construction material. So how can we think of landscape in the same way that Prof. Seeram is putting this idea of where the landscape comes from and what is its life cycle throughout the building? Does it eventually overgrow and become part of the building, or if the building becomes obsolete, does it just become a giant greenhouse or something? I think these two questions to kind of enter into this topic of multidisciplinariness that we hope to achieve.
Well, Emma, you read our mind, so absolutely. I think there's the circularity thinking or circularity gap thinking is relatively new, and there are worldwide reports. It suggests that we are, when I say we, not just Singapore, the whole world, we are still far behind in closing the circularity gap. So in terms of the buildings, construction, architecture, right now the current focus is about operational side, which is necessary and is also a low-hanging fruit, and clear solutions can be executed. Moving forward, they need to be augmented with a full life cycle thinking, the way you just now framed the question. And that's where it requires us to look at going back to the basics about all the materials and other, because in building, a typical building, there are more than hundreds of material systems, and then they are also integrated with lots of other systems. So there must be a thinking how this can be at the end of life or somewhere in the middle, how this can be much more circular in its design, in its total life cycle. And if you can think in that in that framework, I'm very sure there's a lot of room for innovations.
Okay. Emma, in response to your astute question, I think you need to hit the nail on the head. For the longest time, we were viewed as like just another material, right? When we are called into a project that says, no, please dress this up for us, right? We are just like facade specialists, and our input was being very much from a visual basis. And I think that is a sad state of affairs, because landscape as a profession, more than most professions, we are able to influence the challenges that we are facing, like climate change, because we can deal at a much larger scale, right? Our profession allows us to reforest thousands of square kilometers, or we can design a park furniture. So in Ramboll Studio Dreiseitl, right, we do a lot of catchment plannings, right, to help manage the flow, the natural flows of stormwaters, to prevent flooding, right, to prevent erosion, to moderate temperatures. These are the things we can do at a much almost country scale, right? At a building scale, I think we can also be used beyond just material, right? We see in Kampong Admiralty, it has provided a much more livable environment, not just for humans, right, but for animals. It has provided spaces for programs, right? The cover of the roof moderates the temperature, the heat load on the building roof, right? The engineering of the stormwater management systems actually saves you money because there's less use of water, right? And it's used to animate the surface, which helps with the programming of the public spaces, right? And it provides moments of delight. So there are many layers to how we can use this, but we need to start by moving away from just considering landscape as just a material to be used to clad or a building or to beautify a space.
Yeah, thank you for answering my question. I actually have a few other questions, but because we are reaching our end of time, it'll be a bit difficult to answer, to have so many. I mean, like Prof. Seeram opened his entire sharing by talking about the entire world. So we can really talk about the entire world if we wanted to. But I think what I noticed across, like all our speakers are talking about, actually what needs to change is kind of a way of thinking. Really, like what Prof. Seeram is talking about, and some of the people are asking in the chat, is really the way we think about do we even need a building, you know, in our future cities? Maybe if it's really about material, what building, what are the boundaries? And then of course for Leonard, he seems to be suggesting that landscape actually is part of the processes of a building, especially energy. It's just that it's not constructed in the way we think it is, but engaging in the energy transfers and exchange. So to think about designing that, I mean, to me, it's very interesting. And of course, from Vivienne, Keok, and Shirley, they're all proposing projects that aim to change a mentality towards a specific material and a specific process. They aren't really engaging with the same topics as Prof. Seeram and Leonard because they're talking more about more fundamentally, how do you construct these architectures? But we are using the medium we know to change the culture that we approach certain materials. So maybe, I don't know if any of our students want to ask a question or bring up something that was talk about something that was brought up.
So any questions from our student speakers?
Yeah, I actually felt like Prof. Seeram and Leonard, because we approach you because we know that you each have your own personal interest, expertise in the topics that they're bringing up. I mean, Prof. Seeram, other than circular economy, you actually have a hand in designing nanotechnology for biomedical materials. So I'm sure that Shirley's inclusion of your topic, which is not really typically architecture, is brought into the realm of architecture. So, I mean, I wonder how is there a reason why all these proposals haven't occurred? I mean, beyond the technical, more about the structures of living, the way we view our environment.
I think one of the key questions that we wanted to raise was, so beyond just the thesis, where can students actually find opportunities to further their projects? So let's say for Shirley, how can she take it a step further? How realistic are these projects presented? And what are the potentials?
Yeah. Well, thanks, Emma and Shiva. I'm involved with lots of other companies and organizations. For example, I'm not promoting any company. For example, Capital Land, they have an annual challenge, and not only Capital Land, actually even Hitachi and other companies. So what they have is, if the students can further align their pitch to these anchor corporates, they would have a lot more support. And also they could learn a lot more things from them, because they are actively looking at how to make themselves sustainable. Most of the companies right now, the big ones, especially based in Singapore and all the European country and US, China too, they are focusing how to reach the carbon neutrality target by 2050. That's not easy at all, and actually requires all the solutions you are thinking about. So I think if you can take the next step where, like the way you are participating in this webinar, you can reach out to these corporates. They are happy because they are looking for ideas. They also know most of the ideas are no longer with them. They need to reach out to the newer ideas from different sectors. And it's a real encouragement if you can reach out to them. They're approachable. And another news is major companies now have a chief sustainability officer. And that was a role that did not exist 10 years ago. And moving forward, listed companies, they might have actually a committee looking at the board level, looking at the sustainability. So that means there are people who would listen to you if you reach out to them. And of course, you would have to prepare well the way you prepare for this presentation. You had to do your homework and reach there. But as Emma was saying, how do you integrate these totally unrelated things like biomedical nanotechnology? Answer is yes. In fact, I was quite surprised. I had an exchange student from Europe. He messaged me last week. He said, oh, I have this idea. I said, what is it? He said, Prof, I want to put all these microorganisms to the rooftops. And the idea is these microorganisms are hygroscopic. So they absorb the moisture from the atmosphere. And then he came up with a tubular structure that the water that emitted by the absorbed microbes, and they will start creating some flow, and he wants to create an energy, and then he power the building. So here he's talking about microbes, absorption of water from the atmosphere, the flow systems, as completely so many different technologies. And in fact, he sent me a one-page write-up. And then I said, let's work out some numbers, because you are putting together a lot of different technologies. If you can put together some basic numbers, that gives an overall idea about the simple feasibility assessment. And then after that, you look at how to scale it up and test bed and pilot it. So to square off the question, what Vivienne said, where do we go? That's actually, there are lots of now organizations, both the corporates as well as philanthropic organizations, as well as government funding agencies, where they are, conducting lots of competitions, lots of incubators, and so you can reach out to them. I'm sure as you knock the doors, you'll find someone said, yeah, hi, your idea is good. Let's talk to each other and figure out how we can take this forward.
Yeah. Maybe just a quick word from me to Shirley, Keith, and Vivienne. I think your future is bright, right? First off, because you were lucky enough to be born in the right country. Singapore, more than many countries, right, is constantly trying to strive to be in the forefront, right, of future thinking, and you're prepared to spend the money, right? And with your innovative approach, I think there are many suitors waiting for you out there. Also, all your topics, individual topics, all deal with the challenges that everybody else is facing, right? Climate change, recycling, right? And control of pathogens, pandemic, totally relevant. So we from from professional places, I see tenders that's looking more and more for ideas like yours. So the only thing now you need is courage to pursue your dreams, right? And to tie up with the right people.
Thank you, Leonard and Prof. Seeram. I think we have a lot more questions for you guys, but I'm afraid that we already exceeded the entire forum by 6 minutes, close to 10. So I think it's about time to wrap up. Do any of you all have any more questions, student speakers, to our guest speakers? So if not, I think we'll be wrapping up this session now. So thank you very much. We have come to the end of the presentation session. A very big thank you to our guest speakers, Prof. Ramakrishna, Mr. Leonard Ng, our student speakers, Shirley, Keok, and Vivienne. And last but not least, the audience for your very kind support. So stay tuned to the NUS MR Grad Show 2021 website for more events. The next one will be organized by the Critical Architecture Cluster at 4 p.m. today. So I'll be dropping the contact details of Prof. Seeram for the slides if you guys want. And yeah, any questions that you might have for the guest speakers, I think I'll be crafting an email. Do let me know. Just drop it in a YouTube chat. So thank you very much and have a great weekend. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All the best.
Thank you very much.
So